This one's for the folks they left out. They took punch after punch, yet never cracked. Those who entered conflicts they never wanted to fight and emerged triumphant. You were never just a name in the crowd. You were the outlier, the one who refused to break when the pressure was at its peak. They didn't expect you to climb. I didn't think you'd survive the slander and spectacle that the public would bring down. But here you are, stronger than ever, standing on the point they said you'd never reach. They turned your battle into a show. Cast yourself as the villain in a story that you did not write. They ensured that the whole world saw their effort to eliminate you. They didn't know, however, that the audience seldom follows the script exactly, just for the show. And now, the same eyes that saw your demise are seeing their own. Because the truth does not disappear. Neither do those meant to withstand the storm. This isn't just about surviving. It is a win. You didn't just make it through. You thrived. And it is a storyline that no one can alter. The illusion was effectively maintained, resulting in a show that needed audience participation without them even realizing it. They cheered. They jeered. They readily engaged in a performance designed to control rather than entertain. It was never truly about one individual. It was all about dominance and maintaining the status quo. However, deception tends to fade with time. At first, it was hardly perceptible. Slight tone changes have replaced their once confident voices. As uncertainty persisted, the intensity in the air intensified. Those who had before ridiculed with ease found themselves halting and reflecting. Some abandoned the argument entirely, as if breaking ties with the past would absolve them of their guilt. Then came the transformation, subtle at first, yet tough to ignore. The weight of their happiness changed, and the laughter that had before served as their weapon of choice now worked against them. The audience, who had previously been mindlessly following the script, began to see inconsistencies, contradictions, and the fraying edges of a masterfully constructed fiction. The stage, which had been designed to reduce someone to nothing, was now a place of revelation rather than condemnation. None of this required force. There's no glorious revenge. There is no overall plan. The truth was left alone to breathe. As a result, everything was eventually disclosed. Rumors followed them instead. The inquiry, hitherto reserved for the accused, have shifted focus. Once thought to be impregnable, their reputation, the very foundation they stood on, started to crumble, leaking away faster than they could manage. This was no little twist of fate, no slight rebalancing of the scales. It was a restoration of order, one that did not work in their benefit. Their emergence was not an accident. Each action was exact. Each statement was a deliberate assault designed to destroy, assuring that no alternative tale could exist. Their success has never been due to merit. It was all about elimination. They didn't only want victory. They need a scapegoat, a necessary sacrifice to support their own viewpoint. The narrative was never spontaneous or organic. It was meticulously built and brought into existence in locations where objections could not be heard and their voices dominated the echo. The lie did not spread overnight. It was planted, nurtured under the guise of casual care, and expertly marketed as believable conjecture. The falsehood became gospel, not because it was believed, but because attempting it required too much effort. It was simple to accept and replicate, so it thrived. Laughter, disdain, and mockery. There were never spontaneous answers. Instead, there were signs of control systems used to decrease what could not stand on its own. The manipulation worked for a time. Words had been honed into weapons, meant to strike without resistance, so that when people looked, they no longer recognized anybody. Only a warped image, a caricature, a fabrication. However, no illusion can remain long. There is nothing hidden that will not be exposed, and nothing concealed that will not be discovered or brought to light. Luke 8:17. They assumed they could hide the truth via whispers and fabrications. But the truth is like a seed. Press it down, cover it with dirt, and you've laid the groundwork for something unstoppable. Because they failed to understand that the truth is not fragile. It's a force. It doesn't wither in the dark. It takes root. When the time is right, it rushes ahead, taking apart every deception, no matter how well constructed. They weren't just telling a story. They were building an illusion, stacking lie on top of deceit, certain that if they did it enough times, it would become indestructible. It was never about reality. It was all about control, about ensuring that people did not see with their own eyes, but rather through the lens that was provided to them. And for a while, it worked. People nodded and accepted the narrative because belief is easier than scrutiny. It takes effort to discover the truth. However, passivity merely requires agreement. So you marched through it, carrying the weight of something you had never made, burdened with unproven allegations. They didn't just question you. They suggested you doubt yourself. They wanted you to crumble under the pressure, making their words your reality. But here's the deal about being chosen. You were never meant to be fashioned by popular opinion. You were never meant to be transformed by manipulators. Because when you're placed aside, you don't fold. You forge. They mistook influence for permanence and numbers for power. But neither mattered in the end, since a crowd cannot determine the truth. Truth determines itself. What they feared most was not your death. It was your stamina. Because endurance exposes dishonesty in ways that words never can. The longer you stood, the weaker their tale became. The cracks began to show. Not everything at once. Not with flashing lights and fanfare, but in quiet moments of trepidation, indecision, and subtle shifts in attitude as the weight of what they formerly believed became unstable. Now, look around. What was once firmly spoken is now mumbled with hesitation. The formerly haughty eyes are now filled with uncertainty, as is the weight they sought to put on you. It's dropping off your shoulders and landing just where it belongs. Because lies need continual maintenance. But this is the truth. The truth stands on its own. It does not beg, does not seek validation. When examined closely, there is no shaking. They thought they could speak things into existence, but you were never just a character in their story. You demonstrated that their narrative was fictitious. And now that the dust has cleared, one thing remains constant. For a time, they remained firm in their conviction, certain of their own righteousness, as if they were unearthing something, unveiling a secret truth. But control was never really theirs. They were not the architects, only the messengers. They were mindlessly following a stream and mistook it for free choice. Meanwhile, you remained in the center of the chaos, seeing judgment being sold like a commodity, dispersed, bartered, and traded for approval and the fleeting pleasure of communal agreement. It was easy to believe the constructed world as long as no one questioned its fragility. But falsehoods are frail. They can only stay together if they avoid examination. Only if no one attempts to go too far. Then follows the inevitable, insidious, creeping breakdown. The truth does not have to be hurried. It just needs to wait. And when it arrives, it does not derail the illusion. It ruins it. You're here for a reason. If you feel called, answer it. Click join to get access to exclusive material, in-depth insights, and a supportive community. This is not just a membership. It's an awakening. Begin your heavenly mission. Join the selected. Initially, they spoke without hesitation. Their conviction functioned as a deterrent, protecting them against the possibility of being deceived. They retold the narrative as if it were true. They carry the weight of their belief with pride, spreading it as if possession of the story made them superior to doubt implies recognizing their own wrong. However, time does not preserve illusions. It erodes them. The fractures start off small and hardly noticeable. There is a disagreement here. There is a distinction here. A painful experience in which something did not fit as well as it had before. And once planted, doubt never dies. It lingers, expands, and dismantles. Internal certainty, turning quiet suspicion become undeniable reality. Initially, the murmurs were quiet. Why does the story always change? Was there ever proof? How did we accept it? Without a question. Those who had before spoken boldly started to hesitate one by one. They could no longer ignore the narrative's ongoing boreholes. Conversations that had previously been regarded as fact seemed fragmentary and uncertain. However, there was no battle, no counterattack, and no desperate attempt to restore the truth. It was allowed to grow organically and breathe. Silence, rather than opposition, eventually destroyed the falsehood. The absence of confirmation, the weight of uncertainty, and the realization that they had been fooled, not by you, but by their own tendency to believe. For there is nothing covered that will not be disclosed, and nothing hidden that will stay undiscovered. Luke 12 verse 2. They held firm, certain that their version of the story would triumph. They spoke as if their words were carved in stone, as if no one would dare to challenge them. And for a time, it seemed like they were accurate. The story spread. The audience believed, and no one questioned the script they were handed. They mistook their influence for permanence, and their strength for truth. A lie, no matter how well crafted, can never withstand the truth. Because the truth is not sensitive. It does not need defense, does not want to be heard, and does not fight for survival. The truth awaits, and then the weight of truth becomes too great to ignore. No misconception can resist it. They assumed they were in control. They thought they were the ones establishing the scenario. Narrative direction. Keeping the power. However, power based on dishonesty is borrowed. It never really belongs to the person holding it. They were just leasing their authority, borrowing time from a system that will eventually turn on them. And their time has run out. They did not just misjudge the conditions. They underestimated the nature of truth itself. They built their words around perception, manipulated reality via influence, and convinced the world that what they said was more essential than what was true. For a while, people accepted it because it is easier to obey than to question, accept than to investigate. However, dishonesty has a poor foundation. It cannot withstand scrutiny. It will not survive if people start examining too carefully. And now the transformation has begun. The same voices that used to repeat their remarks without hesitation now express skepticism. The same people who stood behind them now take a step back, watching, waiting, and realizing that something does not add up. Their confidence has turned to fear, and their certainty into doubt. So, here it is. The reckoning. The unveiling. Everything they thought was permanent begins to slip from their grasp. They are now responsible for the consequences of their own lies. They sense it. Nowadays, every conversation seems to be unique. Each whisper contains an inquiry. They're completely aware of this. So does everyone else. The truth didn't need a grand introduction. It did not need a struggle, a fight, or an army to defend it. It just arrived. And when it arrived, the illusion broke. Because that is what generally happens. Truth does not need permission to exist. It just stands steadfast, unshaken, and unstoppable. They believe they are the masters of the story, shaping it to their liking and using it as both a shield and a sword. Names were transformed into glasses. Reputations based on entertainment and illusion expand not via facts or reasoning, but by sheer momentum. It was never about the truth. It was all about control, and they embraced it, ensuring that every conversation revolved around their favorite tale. Each sneer and smirk supports their account of events. The crowd followed without hesitation, not because they understood, but because they wanted to participate, to be a part of something, to stand with those who seemed invincible. But illusions are fragile. The pedestal they built, the same platform used to throw others down, is now breaking under them. The formerly amused eyes are now filled with uncertainty. The once applauding hands have stopped moving, and the question is no longer about their intended purpose. This is about them. The certainty they once commanded is eroding, replaced by murmurs of half-formed doubts that infiltrate once ironclad conversations. The story, which was formerly accepted without question, is now met with scrutiny and criticism, with no pushback required. There is no impassioned call for justice, no attempt to change history. Only the patients remained, trapped in their own interpretation of events while everything around them changed. And now they are the ones being measured, their words evaluated, and every move observed. The whispers that used to strengthen their grip are now slipping from their grasp, turning against them, revealing cracks they never believed would exist. Because illusions are produced with borrowed time, and the clock has run out. The stage they once controlled now feels odd under their feet. The same voices who once championed their tale are now in question, watching with fear as the weight of their own actions bears down on them what they once handled so carelessly. Words of influence and manipulation have gone against them. They believe they were responsible for someone else's demise. However, each step they made just laid the route for their own downfall. There was never a motive to retaliate. There's no need to fall to their level, because equilibrium does not need force. It operates silently and unseen, unconcerned with pride or malice. It wasn't about settling scores or pursuing retribution. It was a simple and inevitable course change. They mistook control with permanency, thinking they could modify perception with no repercussions. However, in their continual pursuit of demolishing others, they left themselves exposed. And now the seriousness of their deception is obvious. They did not just undercut another. They undermined truth itself, and truth, no matter how long it had been concealed, always resurfaces, unyielding and absolute. The shift is noticeable. The momentum they had previously relied on had switched, carrying them into the same maelstrom they had unleashed, with an excited audience repeating their shouts. He now watches with unease. Their formerly unwavering allegiance is eroding due to disparities. The finely woven illusion they created is unraveling strand by strand, and what was once a smooth reality has turned into a tangled jumble of discrepancies. This is not a coincidence or a chance. It depicts the return of equilibrium, with the natural order resuming its place. Because attempting to erase someone else's identity does not devalue the target. They uncover flaws in its own basis. The foundation is already deteriorating, not via force, but by inevitability. The disadvantage requires no disclosure. There is no reason for disagreement. There is no grand unveiling. The truth has already spoken for itself in the silence of those who formerly cheered them on, as seen by sideways glances now conveying uncertainty instead of affection. There is no easy way out of this. Losing credibility is more than just a temporary setback. It is the last verdict. They no longer have control over the image they painstakingly created. No matter how hard they try to reclaim it, heal the wounds, or rewrite history, they cannot change what has happened. And those who formerly stood by them, who followed without question, are now pulling away, distancing themselves, and some even openly opposing them. The weight they attempted to shift onto someone else has landed squarely on their shoulders. They no longer control the whispers, turning against them. They're repeating their own errors. The story they imagined they were writing was never yours to bear. Finally, they didn't break you. They just revealed themselves. Pretense can only serve as a shield for so long. The weight of exposure is permanent, allowing no space for escape, adjustment, or undoing what has been seen. They anticipated resistance and a desperate appeal. Assume that defending yourself would consume you, but you did not play their game. You let them manufacture their illusions, shape their version of events, and construct their house of cards while you remained unaffected. Because they didn't understand the basic principle that truth does not seek recognition. Now look where you are, unshaken, careless, and indestructible as they succumb to the weight of their own deception. There was never any need for vengeance. Choosing self-preservation above conflict is a strength they will never possess. They thrived on show. They fed on division, mistook upheaval for control. But your path was different. You have never sought validation, never battled to be believed. You persevered, allowing time to disclose the truth and letting reality speak for itself. Those who can see beyond surface-level distractions see the difference. They distinguish between those who make up stories and those who just live them. They understand that while others were focused on tearing down, you were focused on establishing something authentic, and they remain linked to a tale. They refuse to probe. They were not intended to see the truth to begin with. Some individuals cling to lies not because it persuades them, but because acknowledging their faults is too tough. However, you are not obligated to shoulder that weight. Power is not confined inside the noise. In the silence, they understand that no matter how hard they strive to control vision, the ultimate outcome is never within their grasp, and their attempts to cling on are failing. The confidence they formerly projected is now gone. The certainty in their statements had given way to mistrust. They believed that dishonesty had a strong foundation, but when the structure collapsed, they were left scrambling. Performance shifts. They instantly feel sad. Their phrases were purposely softened, and their tone took on a rehearsed quality. However, actual accountability never requires a script. The apologies are purposeful and imprecise, meant to provide just enough information without admitting fault. They have no regrets about their choices. They lament the outcome. Then comes rebranding, a desperate effort to recast oneself as misunderstood, to depict their actions as innocent mistakes rather than intended harm. They were misled. They were unaware. They merely reinforced their thoughts. However, the transparency of it is clear. It is not growth. It is damage control. While some will be deceived into believing the illusion, the reality will prevail. When trust is broken, it cannot be regained. Redemption is not a performance. It is a process that requires more than just words. And the one thing they can't supply is the one thing that will ever make a difference: true responsibility. The fallout is obvious. Desperation penetrates their actions. A frantic attempt to mend something that cannot be repaired. They modify their tone and language, hoping to reframe the past as a misunderstanding rather than a deliberate betrayal. However, the damage has already been done. They think they can rewrite views, and that if they change the story now, others will follow. They continued as normal, without hesitation. What they failed to see was that the age of blind faith was past. The illusion shattered. No amount of performance will put everything back together. The people who previously defended them are now apprehensive. Their affection was fraught with distrust. The certainty is gone. Every syllable they say now has a new weight. Dissected, examined, no longer taken at face value, for betrayal is difficult to forget, and dishonesty outlasts any act of generosity. Look closely. The shift is obvious. Conversations are increasingly characterized by calm skepticism rather than adoration. Where there was formerly unwavering support, there are measured replies, guarded expressions, and an unspoken wariness that was never there before. It's not rage or anger, but something far worse: mistrust. People never forget the moment they realized they had been misled. Even those who remain exhibit cautious conduct. Always remember that what was once undeniably true has proven fragile. Their remarks no longer have the same weight as previously. Instead of certainty, they are met with silence, hesitation, and a hitherto unheard of delay. They will attempt to repair, reclaim lost territory, and regain the authority they once wielded so readily. However, the stains caused by exposure are difficult to remove. Trust is not a repurchasable currency. Once fractured, they no longer have control over it. Their impact has lessened. They attempted to rewrite history in order to maintain their version of events, despite being reduced to echoes in a location where they formerly commanded attention. However, reality has changed. People who formerly followed without question are now afraid to believe. Their unwavering support was undermined by the weight of evidence. Every movement they make is scrutinized. Every statement was met with cautious calm rather than open approval. They believed they could push the load of uncertainty onto someone else, forcing them to endure the consequences of their deception. But now that weight clings to them, and the stain they once tried to impose on someone else has become their own, an indelible scar on their reputation. It was once a powerful tool for persuasion, but it has since become fragile, easily questioned, and irreversibly altered. They exist midway between previous magnificence and present uncertainty, tolerated but never fully trusted. Their voice is still audible, but it no longer dominates the room. The transition is unmixed and competent. Their presence, which was once dominant, now seems hesitant, and their remarks lack the weight they once had. They act as if nothing has changed, but the atmosphere around them reveals a different story. The silence around their words speaks louder than any accusation. Those who formerly praised them are now observing from a distance. I am no longer assured or convinced. They will attempt to reconstruct what has been lost, to create an identity that is untainted by their own actions. However, the foundation is fractured. People do not forget the moment they realized they had been deceived. Regardless matter how much effort is put into rebuilding, the cracks remain visible. They may win new adherents and convince others that the past is no longer relevant. Those who observed the truth will remember that they believed power was permanent. This perspective might be modified indefinitely. However, dishonesty is a fleeting commodity, and they have drained their supply.